The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining today. We'll dive into the webinar in just a moment, but first we want to do a little bit of housekeeping. I like to make sure that you can interact with me using the dashboard that you have in front of you. First, I would like you to look for the button that has a hand and a green up arrow. This button is going to allow you to raise your hand. So if you're all hearing me, please go ahead and raise your hand now. Awesome, looks like a lot of you hear me now. Let's do one final test. I'd like you to use the questions window you have in front of you to ensure that you'll be able to ask questions when you have them today. So tell us what city or state you're coming from. Perfect. Looks like everybody can hear us now. When you have questions, please use that questions window to reach out to me. We want to make sure that you have all the knowledge you need to be prepared for the new WordPress editor. Oh, give me just, looks like we do have a few issues. Hold on. Just make sure everyone can actually join. Not sure. Okay. Also, we do have a lot of people joining us today, and we're going to do our best to get the answers to your questions before we wrap up. The webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you later. If you do have any technical issues with the webinar today, at any point, you can first try logging out and back into the session. If you're still experiencing issues, you can call the 855 phone number you see on the screen. The GoToWebinar support team can help you with any webinar issues. Perfect. So welcome to the Bluehost webinar, Exploring Gutenberg, Learning to Navigate the New WordPress Editor. For today's webinar, we're going to go through content for the first 30 minutes or so. We'll do a live demo, and then we'll open the session for questions. Okay. So first today, we're going to talk quickly about what Gutenberg is, how WordPress is moving from text boxes to blocks, how to use blocks to build a web page or blog post, how to prepare your website for Gutenberg, and then we will do a live demo on how to install the Gutenberg plugin and begin building your first blocks on the webinar. So today's experts we have today will be myself. I'm Michelle Thomas, the WordPress content manager here at Bluehost. I am also a marketing contributor on the WordPress open source project and a WordCamp speaker. I also have WordPress core developer Micah Wood with me. If you want to say hello, Micah.
Hey, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great to have you here today. I also have our WordPress content specialist, Desiree Johnson, here to help get your questions answered in a timely manner. Awesome. So let's dive right in. So first, let's talk a little bit about WordPress. WordPress, with so many content management systems out there, why should you actually choose WordPress, right? So it's simple. WordPress is powerful. Over 30% of the internet uses WordPress to power their website. And in case you're wondering, the next largest CMS only has 3.2% in comparison. So it's huge. WordPress is an open source project, which means it is free, can be redistributed or modified by anyone. It was created with the goal to democratize the web. Also, WordPress is completely run by contributors like Micah here. WordPress has been in existence since 2003, which means it's stable, it was built to last, and with updates like Gutenberg, it ensures that it will stay around forever. So let's talk a little bit about what the current editor looks like today. We see that the current editor is based on the Tiny MCE, which is considered the classic editor. It's heavily text-based and restricts customization for content creators. But it allows for HTML editing and the addition of media. However, it does not allow users to create custom features within a post. So in walks Gutenberg. Gutenberg is the new editor that will actually require a new and different set of skills like JavaScript and React, along with well-established and long-established development skills like PHP, HTML, and CSS as well. So this will mark an entirely new frontier for many WordPress professionals. But for us everyday users, this just means the new editor that will be part of the WordPress 5.0 update. It'll change the editing experience from text-based to block-based, which will make it then more visual. And it will also give more power to content creators who don't necessarily know how to code. So the plan as of today, latest news suggests that Gutenberg will be live sometime between November and January. The hopeful date is November 19th. However, Automattic CEO Matt Mullenweg has stated that he will not release it until it is ready. So what does ready really mean? Ready means that known bugs have been fixed and that Gutenberg runs smoothly with key integrations. So if the update is not ready by November, it will be held until January to allow contributors and users to enjoy their holiday season. Also, as a quick note, the current editor is available in the plugin directory as Classic Editor for those who wish to maintain their current workflow while adjusting to the change. We'll walk through how to access the plugin directory in just a bit. So a lot of people have asked, why Gutenberg and why now? So the name Gutenberg actually derives from Johannes Gutenberg, the inventor of the first movable printing press known to man. This invention completely changed the way written content was published and distributed. And just like that disruptive nature of Johannes Gutenberg, the Gutenberg editor does the same for the online publishing experience. So this is a welcome change for WordPress. It allows for a more seamless website building experience for users who are not actually able to code. It also makes for a simplified mobile editing experience. Yeah, that actually means that you'll be able to edit your website or blog content on the go and easily. So Gutenberg really just focuses on your content, which is your website's most valuable asset, really. Gutenberg will also allow for developers to create guardrails that will help guide content editors to their intended goals. So consider it similar to the bumpers that are used to improve your performance when you're bowling. I know I've needed them a time or two, and Gutenberg does the same thing for your online web experience. In addition, Gutenberg actually also allows developers or agencies to create interactive and custom templates that everyday users like you and I can easily update without the fear of breaking your website. So the change may seem uncomfortable right now, but it is going to lead to more possibilities for everyone in the future. Matt Mullenweg definitely believes that his life work is improving WordPress, and he just wants us to push through the fear together and learn a little bit in a different way, maybe, to actually grow ourselves in the future as well. So we've talked a little bit about the move from text boxes to blocks, and we know why, that's move from text boxes to block, but we want to know what the block experience actually means and how you can benefit from them. So blocks are similar to the blocks you played with as a child. Maybe you built a castle or a highway and then you broke it down and built something else. Gutenberg blocks are similar to that. This new editor separates all the elements that could coexist on a page or a post into individual units called blocks. These blocks can contain anything from images and videos to quotes and text. And you're able to insert the block from the menu into any different format you'd like. So the content of each of these blocks can be edited separately, making it possible to completely customize your appearance of the appearance of your website or post. So one key advantage to the block editing experience of Gutenberg is the ability to see how a finished page can look while it's being edited, which is a feature that's not currently possible with the classic editor. What that means is instead of having to click the preview mode to actually view your website, you can now view it as you're creating it. And it allows you to do that, like I said, on the go. So through your mobile phone and on your desktop. So the really juicy part about Gutenberg is the custom blocks that you can create. So the block-based system allows for you to insert custom blocks for specific uses and effects. So if you're working with a developer or an agency, you could have them create custom blocks that come with their own preset features ready to be dropped into a page or a post whenever you need it. For example, if you're running a cooking blog and you use the same format when you post a recipe online, you could actually have a developer create a custom block for you that will set all the formatting you need at that time. So you could easily do it without their help every time you post a blog. So the functionality of blocks extends beyond just the content creation piece. The first appearance of Gutenberg will be in the 5.0 update, but it's only the first stage of its development. At least 2 more stages are expected in the future. One for extending Gutenberg's block design features to page design, and one for actually building entire websites. So what do blocks actually mean for you? Blocks give you power. Power like you've probably never seen it before. The ability to actually see and make changes to your blog on the go or post blogs with custom features is brand new to WordPress. So text that you paste from your Word doc or your Google Docs will automatically get cleaned up and converted into blocks instantly. The blocks make perfect use of space between each of them. So your galleries, your blog posts, your pages will look cleaner than they ever have before. So if you decide at the last minute, hey, I no longer want an image at the top of my post, not a worry at all. Just drag and drop it to wherever you'd like to see it on your page. And again, no worries, we'll show you exactly how to do this pretty soon. So the possibilities of blocks, as you can tell, are pretty endless. If you don't have the ability to create these custom blocks yourself or the resources to hire a developer or an agency, you still have great access to some already created blocks like the image and quote and table features that you can use today. Also, another cool feature is that every block you create on your own without a developer, without an agency, you can save as reusable blocks. So you can essentially create your own presets. So for example, if you have a custom heading that you like or custom brand colors that you use for your website, you can create that block one time and save it as a reusable block. Again, also known as a preset. So let's look a little bit at what this looks like. I recently went on a trip to New York with my sister this summer, and I wanted to share my experience with my blog subscribers. So I easily create a title and I upload an image from the top of the Rockefeller Center looking over towards the Empire State Building. I can add a caption that shows exactly what my viewers are looking at. I can add the image and I can create the title in seconds. So an extension of that, if I decide to add a little bit extra to that page, I can then go in, insert a new block of content, and I can write exactly what I did. This will be a little bit short for the use case, but I'll just say I went to New York, I had a great time, and this is what I did. And then one of my favorite features of this new editor for someone who's not a developer like myself is that you can pull a quote. So you can use the pull quote block to create a standout sentence or statement that you want your viewers to see. You can give it a citation if it's written by someone else, or if it's yourself, you can put that in there and it adds a little cool feature to your website. So we've talked a little bit about how to build the blocks. So we're just about ready to go into the demo, but before then, I want to talk about what steps you should take now to better understand Gutenberg and to have a seamless experience with the new editor. So this is how you actually will prepare your website for Gutenberg. If you're a Bluehost customer, you have access to a staging environment that will allow you to test your site before pushing anything live. This can help prevent your website from going down if you have a plugin or a theme that does not work with Gutenberg. But there are currently 56,280 some odd plugins in the WordPress.org repository. That's a ton of plugins. So it's very likely that some of these may not be compatible with Gutenberg. Therefore, you should test it now. Once you're in staging, you'll install the Gutenberg plugin and start testing it. If you're not a Bluehost customer, I would suggest contacting your web host to figure out the best way to ensure your site will still work with Gutenberg. There are other ways to do it. This is just the best way. So please note that when you are actually installing and activating a plugin, if you do it in the staging environment or in the live production site, the process is exactly the same. So again, I'll show you how to do that in just a moment, but In written format, you'll literally go to the left-hand side of your dashboard, your WordPress dashboard, click on Add New under Plugins, and under the featured plugins, you'll see Gutenberg. You can click to install that, and then you'll need to activate the plugin in order for it to show on your site. This is a visual representation of that, but it's important to note that if you are a Bluehost customer, your WordPress account will automatically be updated when the 5.0 update is live. You do not have to do anything for your site to run the new editor. These are the steps we suggest you take before November. Okay, so here's, so just a quick step for some of us that are, like I said, current customers. I'll quickly show our Bluehost customers how to create a staging environment. So you'll go to the left-hand side of your dashboard again, and click on the Bluehost plugin. That's actually a plugin that we use for you to access a number of things, one of them being our staging environment. So you'll click the drop-down list and the staging option. You'll then click the option to create a new staging site, which you'll see here next to the arrow. Once your staging site has been successfully set up, you can access the site by clicking Go to Staging Site. A quick note, you can also clone your current live site, also known as your production site, if you've made changes since creating the staging environment. You also have access to create a new staging environment as well. A quick note here, now I'm able to see that I'm in the staging environment, and I see that my blog that I've just created about my trip to New York is live. The great thing about it is that you can not only test your current site, but you can also test the new theme should you decide you want to change the look and feel of your website, or you can test a new plugin. So before you actually install anything, be sure that plugin will actually work on your site, whether in Gutenberg or in the classic editor. So this allows you to actually ensure that every change you make to your site keeps the same user experience for your website visitors. Assuming you've tested the plugin in your staging environment and have no issues, you should be ready to install this on your live website. So depending on when you actually set up your Bluehost account, your staging environment may look a little differently. If you don't see it as outlined here, there are other ways to ensure that you have access to check your site. Again, we would suggest you do this before November, just in case Gutenberg is launched in November. You can do that by backing up your website. You'll back up your website and then install the plugin the same way we've discussed, and then just test it. If you have an issue with it, you can uninstall that plugin, deactivate the Gutenberg plugin, and then run the classic editor until you can work out those issues. Therefore, your customers or your visitors will not have a disrupted experience with your website. So now that we've established what Gutenberg is and how to use it, Mike is going to walk you quickly through how to install the Gutenberg plugin and how to create a post built with different blocks. Take it away, Micah.
Yeah, let me, I guess I need to share my screen here. This is a long list of names. Is there a quick button I can hit? I'm trying to find it here.
Yeah, it's, oh, wow. I seem to have lost it as well. I think I got you. Hold on.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Let's see.
It's loading now.
Okay. Just let me know when you can see my screen.
If everybody can give a thumbs up if they can see Micah's screen.
Hopefully most people.
Looks like we're getting a few. Yes,
Okay.
It looks like some people can see you. Go ahead.
Good. So this is a WordPress site. This is the plugins page. Essentially what I'm going to do is locate Gutenberg. You can install Gutenberg if you come into Add New and you search for Gutenberg. Actually, it's right here, but you can type in Gutenberg and it should narrow that down and should be the first on the list here. And all you have to do is hit the Install Now button. Mine says activate since it's already here. So I'm just going to go ahead and activate, and it's going to drop me back in this page showing that Gutenberg is active. So ultimately, there's a few things to note. One is there is a Gutenberg Demo page, which at the moment is shown in the whenever you activate the Gutenberg plugin. Eventually, Gutenberg will be in WordPress core itself, so there will be no plugin in the future, but for now, you can play with Gutenberg using this plugin. So you can click here and it will take you to the Gutenberg demo, where it demos a lot of the features and layouts, and you can play around with the page. As you can see, there's a lot of, features in terms of being able to make images full width or extend a little bit beyond where the content normally would. And the same with videos, and there's all kinds of different blocks and things in here that you can use. But I'm going to walk you through just kind of the basics of creating a new post using Gutenberg. So over here on the posts, I'm going to hit Add New. And so this is going to look very empty compared to what you're probably used to in WordPress. Ultimately, you want to give your page or post a title. We'll call it Gutenberg. And then it has this little write your story here. And as you can see, there's a few icons, and then when you hover over it, you get this little plus sign. So this is ultimately where you're going to hit the plus sign if you want to use some sort of block besides text. If you just want text, you can click there, start typing, and it'll let you do that, and you can hit enter and it'll start a new block. So each paragraph here is a separate block. You can click on an existing block, and there's always a toolbar here which allows you to do different things. Obviously, if you're trying to maybe bold some text or something like that, that's where that is now. It's context specific, so it's not always shown like it was in the previous editor. You'll get those options when you click into a specific block. So we can add a different type of block by hitting the plus button. So here we have the most used. You can collapse these sections down and see all the different types or classifications of blocks. So common blocks here is listed. So paragraph is the one we just used. We could put in a heading, an image. We'll just drop in an image. So in this case, we put an image in, but of course we haven't assigned an image. So really it's just a placeholder. So this is a common pattern in Gutenberg where you see a placeholder, and then you're able to upload an image, or you can select something from your media library and drop it in. So we'll select that one, and as you can see, it drops it straight in. You do have alignment options if you want the image aligned to the left versus the right, or maybe centered. If you turn that off, it'll do what the default is, which is generally center, I believe. If your theme supports Gutenberg, particularly this feature of being able to make things wider than the content area, you will see a couple of additional options here, which would be full width and wide. And wide would take the picture out just a little further on each side, and full width would take it to the absolute edges of your screen. So those are options that will happen or be available if your theme supports Gutenberg. If your theme doesn't support Gutenberg, it doesn't mean Gutenberg won't work. It just means that some features like that won't be available. But for the most part, Gutenberg should work out of the box with any theme. There'd just be some particular improvements that could be made by the theme authors to make your experience a little better or easier. So if you want to add a block in between two blocks, when you hover, you can see that we have an insert block before button here. So this little plus, it will add a block in, and then you can, choose a different block. If you wanted to put in, for example, a YouTube video, you could type in whatever type of block that you want, and it would add that in. So we could add in a list, for example, and put that in. And then we could also do a few other interesting things with blocks. So you have the ability to change a block type. So right now we have a paragraph, but if we, for example, wanted this to be a quote, we could convert it to a quote. And all of these transitions, you kind of jump around back and forth to whatever you want it to be. And then we come back to paragraph. So it's easy to change things around. If you wanted to bump this down, you could use the down arrow on the left here. That would bump it down. And so now you've got an extra block up here. You can bump, you can also drag and drop. So if you have a quote and you want to drag it around somewhere else, you can do that. So it just makes it really easy to kind of move, manipulate, and do certain things. One of the things that's kind of difficult in the standard classic editor, for example, is to get two images side by side. That's a simple thing to want to do, but it can be very complicated if you don't know how to properly change things to make that work. So in Gutenberg, that's a lot easier. You can actually create a gallery and drop that in, and we can go to the media library and pick a couple images and insert those in. If we wanted to reorder them before we drop them in, we can do that as well. So now we've got our gallery in here, and as you can see, we now have two side-by-side images. So that's kind of the quick and dirty rundown. There are a few hidden features. So anytime, for example, you're working with a block, over here on the right panel, you'll see that we have some additional options, things that don't make sense within the editing experience on the main screen. And that is to be able to change things here. So let's say you wanted a one-column gallery, you could do that. If you had more images, it would allow you to do, I think, up to 4 or 5, even 6 columns. You can also enable some other options that will change how this gallery displays. You'll notice that when we're clicked into a block, we kind of have this editing experience. But when we click away, we have more of what you'll see on the front end, with the exception of this right caption, which is not really going to be there when we publish. But so the idea of this document panel, which is for the things that you would normally do, like your featured image, you can set that there. Setting your excerpt, all these things are pulled up into this little panel. And the block panel is specific to whatever block you have selected. So if we wanted to select the list, we can come to advanced, add some CSS classes if you know what you're doing there. So every block is going to have some different settings, very different settings. So just be aware that those are located there. Another kind of hidden feature here is that if you drop down to the dot here is kind of accepted as the more icon. So we're going to click the option here for the unified toolbar. And as you can see, there's a toolbar up here. So now, whereas before when we click on the paragraph item, we bar above, now we have the block bar up there. Personally, I like it above the block. We also have spotlight mode, which is where you can kind of fade out everything that's not actively being worked with. And we also have full screen mode if you like the kind of distraction-free content editing. And another, I think a lot of people were kind of wondering where the text view went. The code editor here shows you all the HTML if you are interested in that. And then we have one more thing, which is super cool. So there's more options for this particular block. We have the ability to duplicate this block. We have the ability to easily insert before or after, a new block before or after this one. We can edit this one block as HTML if we wanted to, and kind of switch this block back between those two modes. And we can also add this as a reusable block. And reusable blocks are really cool because when I do this, it's going to ask me to give it a name, and I'll just call it gallery. And hit save, and that is now a reusable block. So if I came down somewhere else and I wanted to add a block, I could come over here, and as you can see, we have a section called reusable, and we have our gallery block here, and it's showing us a preview of what that looks like. So when I click that, it will now add a new gallery block in here. And so now we've essentially duplicated that. Now, of course, you can reuse it not just on the same page, but any other page in Gutenberg. You can also come in to manage all reusable blocks. And so this will take you to a page where you can see all the reusable blocks that you've created. You can get rid of them if you don't want them anymore, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just some of the cool things that you can do with Gutenberg. I think because I just left the page, I lost all my progress on that. So I've got a little Gutenberg test page here set up with all the different types of blocks that exist. So we have audio block, you can have an Instagram block, text, these are all your headings. We've got pre-formatted block, so this is usually used when you're working with code, I believe. You also have a verse block, that is for more like poetry type thing. And tables is something that WordPress out of the box didn't do before, but now we have the ability to add tables. There's also dynamic blocks that'll actually allow you to pull in the latest posts, and we don't actually have any posts at the moment, which is why that's not showing anything. Block quote, buttons, you can format the buttons different ways. And again, any of these things, you can click on them, add a link, change the layout of that particular thing. And we also have the ability to do columns of text, which is not something we could do in the standard editor. Pull quotes, the wide alignment isn't showing because I'm using 2017, which actually doesn't support Gutenberg, the wide and full width features. So we have image blocks. They have cover image blocks as well, which do much larger things. This typically would be used in this fashion, and you can set it to span the full width of the screen if you have a theme that supports that. This is an example of a 2-column gallery, 3-column. So these could all be images, 4-column with 5 images, 3-column with 5 images. So all kinds of interesting layouts that you can do. So yeah, that's kind of the basic rundown on how to use Gutenberg. You can also add blocks from up here. There is undo functionality, and all of the shortcuts that you might normally use, like Control or Command Z to undo, will work. We do have the ability to click this information button, and that gives you an overview of your entire document that you've created. So this is super handy, especially if you've written a very long article with lots of headings and you wanted to just jump to that particular section. You can click down there, and it'll also tell you when you do things that are probably not correct. So here it's telling us we shouldn't use an H1 because our theme probably does that for us. So you can get a lot of information about that, about your content there, which is helpful. If we wanted to update or publish, in the case that we haven't actually published yet, you could just hit this blue button, and at any time you can hit the preview button or the view post button to view your page on the front end. So this is what it looks like in the 2017 theme. So a little bit narrower than maybe some themes might show, but as you can see, everything looks pretty much the same as what you saw in the admin. The goal here is to really have no difference between what you see over here and what you see on the front end. So really, when you're finding a Gutenberg theme, you want to make sure that you find one that does a good job of actually showing you what you get in the Gutenberg editor, so that it matches up with what you see in the front end. So I guess as far as the demo goes, I think that should be it. I guess we can tackle questions?
Yeah, it looks like we have a lot of questions, so we'll definitely get started there. I'm going to take back over the screen really quick. It looks like a few people had some issues joining the session today. Again, don't worry, we will send it out to you to your email. Latest tomorrow, I believe you will receive it based on when the system will download the link. We will go ahead and start answering some questions. Matt Cromwell has also joined us, and he will be fielding some of the questions as well. Matt, if you want to go ahead and do a quick intro, and we can start there.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm head of support at GitWP.com, and I've been an active contributor to Gutenberg as somebody with lots of opinions. Not so much in terms of code, but definitely interested in seeing it grow and progress as a plugin and into core eventually, of course, because as a plugin developer myself, it's a big deal. It matters a lot to the whole ecosystem, and we want to make sure it rolls out in a really good and powerful way that's beneficial for content creators and also for plugin authors like ourselves.
The sound is on. You can't have your sound on. Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, we have quite a few questions. I will let you guys decide who wants to answer. But it looks like there was a question: can you add columns under each image to write text, including bullet points about the image?
Say that again. Can you add
columns under each image to write text, like including bullet points about the image?
Not
sure.
Let's see. So I think my screen's still sharing, right?
Yes. Can you pass it over to me?
I can. Let's see. How do I do that? I just turn it off?
Yes.
Okay.
Should come back.
So you can add columns, and you can add different types of blocks inside of columns. So that could be really any type of block. I'm not sure if that actually answers the question, though, because it sounded a little bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah. You can also add captions, and the captions are typically visible underneath the image as well. But that kind of depends on theme support. But I don't believe the captions support HTML output like bullet points and whatnot. So it's a good question.
Yeah. Okay. So what about images that have alt descriptions for people using screen readers?
So the images that have alt descriptions, all those descriptions should render for the user. So that hasn't changed in the way that WordPress has always done it. So yeah, as far as that goes, that's still in there.
Awesome. And it looks like Don has a question about how to word wrap around a thumbnail or medium-sized image and set the image to be left or right.
So yes, so you can actually, when you add an image and you set the alignment, you can set it as centered, left, or right aligned. If you centered, it is going to essentially center the image and kind of display it in more of your standard block, in the sense that the text above is not going to do any wrapping, and the text below will not do any wrapping either. But if you do left or right aligned, then it will actually wrap any adjacent or text from the block before or after, or well, I guess technically just after. It will wrap that around the image. So if you set that, that's how that works.
Awesome. That's great. I don't know if you guys are seeing any of the questions, but you're welcome to grab any. But it looks like Gregory has. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I saw one kind of question that got asked a bunch of different ways, so I figured it might not hurt to go ahead and hit that one.
Please do.
So a lot of people were asking about compatibility with specific page builders. Is Gutenberg going to replace page builders? That kind of thing. At the moment, Gutenberg is not really going to replace your standard page builder. So you could continue to use your existing page builder and not use Gutenberg. because you would be using your standard page builder, or you can kind of jump back and forth as you want between the page builder and using Gutenberg. I mean, Gutenberg is headed down the path of becoming a full-fledged page builder, but by no means is it going to match the features of most of the page builders that are out there in the premium markets. So,
yeah, that's a good question. Definitely.
I think that's an important thing to understand too, that the Gutenberg rollout actually is in 3 big phases. That this is just the first phase. This one is the Gutenberg editor is what's going to be implemented into 5.1. And after this is rolled out and more stable, they're going to be working on phase 2, which is integrating Gutenberg into the customizer experience. There hasn't been any real mock-ups or anything yet to date about what that will look like or how that will work, but it seems like the goal is that the combination of the customizer with Gutenberg would allow for much more flexible page building layout type experience. And then the last phase that they've talked about publicly is that then there would be a Gutenberg focused theme that most likely would be much more like a skeleton-like theme or a starter theme that would really allow for Gutenberg and the customizer together to really, highlight how powerful website building can be under those circumstances. So again, none of those phase 2 or phase 3 have had any public mock-ups or anything, so it's hard to say what that exactly will look like, but the whole scope of what Gutenberg means is larger than just the editor. Yeah.
And also quickly, a few people have said, where can you get information about Gutenberg and how to get support for the editor? There are quite a few resources out there. The Bluehost blog does have content about Gutenberg, but also there are tons of forums on WordPress.org that will help to answer any questions that you have as you navigate through Gutenberg. Any other questions that you guys are noticing that are a trend? There's a lot
of the questions do seem to be about what Gutenberg can or can't do. And going to different WordCamps and whatnot, I do get those kinds of questions a lot. And typically what I end up saying is, it's free. You can download it today and test it out. And I believe on Bluehost, you guys have staging environments as well. Is that right? Yeah, you could test them out there. It doesn't even have to be on the live site, and run with it and figure out how it works for you and your theme. That's the best way to understand what it does and how you might be able to use it directly.
Yeah, it looks like there's quite a few questions as well too about SEO and how SEO will play into Gutenberg. Can either of you speak to that?
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Micah.
Well, ultimately, the way that Gutenberg works, it just gives you a different way of editing your content within the WordPress admin. As far as the output on the front end of the website, that really hasn't changed. Really just WordPress is storing the content that you've created and outputting that on the front end of the site. So there really shouldn't be any real impact as far as SEO goes unless you actually change your content structure in some way that it would affect that. But yeah, as far as the functionality goes, there shouldn't be a real impact or change there.
Yeah. I totally agree. In addition to that, the most used SEO plugin, not the only one, but the most used one is the Yoast SEO plugin. And they have a lot of references and resources on Gutenberg. Specifically, also, they have been really public about the way they have integrated Gutenberg, integrated their plugin with Gutenberg. And it's actually a great testimony to the way the Gutenberg core team has reached out to the developer community, because one thing that was really important is Yoast needed to have the ability to have a sidebar in order to manage all of that meta content that if you use that plugin, you're familiar with what I'm talking about. Since Gutenberg is really focused on the content, there needed to be a space for the meta information. So, and that did end up happening, and the way that it's integrated now is actually really powerful. So the Yoast team in particular is really excited about it. It should actually help with SEO in the long run. There's also been some really interesting trends in Google. The way that they are giving content priority lately has a lot more to do with having dynamic content or having content that is more media rich. And so in a lot of ways, Gutenberg is really helping to move content to be a lot more media rich in general, like page builders have in the past as well. So that can also be a big boost for your SEO in the long run as well.
Perfect. There are a few questions about it looking a lot like Elementor, which we know is a page builder plugin. Can Micah, can you speak to that about the difference? I mean, obviously Gutenberg is built into the CMS. It's not a plugin, but any feedback on that?
Sure, yeah. So Elementor is a very good page builder. I think it's gotten a lot of traction over the last year or two, however long it's been, I think, since they've come out. But yeah, so the nice thing about Gutenberg is that this is WordPress's answer to kind of standardizing a little bit of this page builder space. So we've got all these different tools, and some are better than others with regard to being able to edit and build a page using some sort of page builder. And so by standardizing this allows plugins to actually be able to really more realistically impact your editing experience and not have to, you know, try to integrate with all the things out there, all the different types of page builders. So it's really, at the moment, if you're using Elementor and you like it, I'd say sure, go ahead, continue to use it. Hopefully over time the general consensus is going to be more towards Gutenberg because it's a standard interface. I know a lot of page builders such as Elementor are actually moving towards supporting Gutenberg any way that they can. And obviously, you know, as the market, I guess, grows for Gutenberg things, whether that's all the different types of integrations and things that have yet to be created, Elementor and a lot of these other page builders like Beaver Builder, they're going to also be contributing and trying to integrate as tightly as possible with Gutenberg. And in some cases, that may mean that you could be in Elementor and use Gutenberg within it, or I don't know. All that's yet to be seen, but I know that they're definitely keeping an eye on it and how they can integrate with it to make it a better thing.
Yeah, definitely. There's another question that I keep seeing quite a bit. Matt, maybe you can speak to this, but a lot of people are asking, is there an advantage to actually installing it now and using it now, which we touched on a bit in the presentation, but people are wondering if their content will be saved and what they do when it goes live versus having the plugin now. So if you could just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good question. You absolutely can install it now as a plugin and see what it's like. The goal for WordPress 5.0 that has been stated in a couple different places is that it would just simply be the WordPress that you're using today, as long as you're on the latest version, and plus Gutenberg. Like that's the whole goal of 5.0 is just WordPress today plus Gutenberg. So you can install the plugin and you get mostly the same experience. I think the main difference right now is that right now, when you go to add a new post or a page, it's going to show you multiple options. One is to create a post with the classic editor or to create the post with Gutenberg. And depending on which page builder you're having, you might see even more options. You might see classic editor, Gutenberg, and Beaver Builder or Elementor or whatever. So you'll have lots of content creation options. But once it's merged into 5.0, I believe, I don't know with certainty, but I believe that out of the box, you won't see those multiple options of classic editor and Gutenberg. It'll just be Gutenberg unless you install another plugin called the Classic Editor. And the Classic Editor is designed essentially to allow you to continue to have the Classic Editor even when you're on WordPress 5.0. And that one then would give you those multiple options. So if you're concerned about any of that stuff, you can install the Classic Editor and keep running and you'll be fine. But in terms of like where your content is and everything, just like Micah mentioned earlier, it doesn't change your content in any way. You can install Gutenberg right now. You'll look at the front end of your website and nothing has changed whatsoever. In the back end, if you look at a post that you created a year ago with Classic Editor, you look at it with the Classic Editor, nothing has changed whatsoever. It's as soon as you open that old post in the admin with Gutenberg that things will look different. And what Gutenberg does with that old content is it has a block that's called Classic Editor all by itself. And what it does is it's going to convert your original content into that one Classic Editor block by itself. And so then that's how it basically preserves all the markup that you had in that post, but showing it in the Gutenberg editor. And then it has, you can see Micah right now on the block. There's those three little dots above the block. This is an image block, so that one doesn't work as well in this case. But those three little dots above the block, they actually give you additional options. And on a Classic Editor block, one of those options is convert to blocks. And what it does is take all of your paragraphs and images and whatnot and convert each one of those into an individual Gutenberg block. So you have the ability to take an old post, you'll see it in one big Classic Editor block, convert it into individual Gutenberg blocks, and then update it with the Gutenberg editor, and then you can hit update. Nothing changes at all on the front end until you hit that update button. At least that's the intention. So yeah, that's essentially what you can do starting today if you like.
Awesome. Any other questions that you guys are seeing that you'd like to hop in and answer?
I did notice a bunch of questions about themes, about finding good themes.
Yes.
I think those are good questions as well. Right now, I think Micah also alluded to this earlier too. Gutenberg is really focused on the ability to create content in the back end. The way it outputs it in the front is basically the same as it does currently with the Classic Editor. It's just that you are able to output a lot more media-rich information. So your theme today really should still be able to support it well. There are a couple features of Gutenberg, like the full width images or the cover image block by itself. These types of Gutenberg specific blocks or layout features, those are not going to work on the front end. You'll see it correctly in the back end, but it won't work on the front end on themes that aren't updated. But they've built in a nice way for the theme to indicate whether or not they're compatible with those features or not. So if they are, you'll see those features available. If they're not, then you're not going to see those features available. So themes should work the same as they always have. But there are plenty of themes out there right now that are working to make the most out of Gutenberg with the theme. Two of them that I like one is called CoBlocks. Their theme is really well done. And there's another one called Atomic. Both of those are really well done and trying to leverage the most out of Gutenberg. But themes are adopting Gutenberg more and more all the time.
Yeah, CoBlocks is actually the plugin that accompanies the themes for ThemeBeans is the name of the company. So every theme that ThemeBeans has is compatible with Gutenberg. So that's a really good theme. I actually run one of those themes on my site.
They have one specific theme called CoBlocks as well.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah, or CoBlock, excuse me.
Gotcha.
And I also noticed quite a few questions about how to back up your site. Micah, can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure. There are a lot of options when it comes to backing up your site. Ultimately, there's a few basic rules that you want to keep in mind. Number one is you always want to back up your site off to some third-party location. So in other words, While Bluehost is great, and any other web host that you have, never trust their backups directly, because they're on the same server that your website is on. And if something happens to your website and it gets hacked and things get messed with, your backups can get messed with too. So you really want to have those in some third-party location. And ideally, you want to have it back up automatically using some sort of schedule. Unfortunately, most of the backup tools that exist that are free don't actually back up to third-party location unless you pay for their premium service. So if you really want to do backups right, chances are you're going to need to spend some money to do it right. But there are some good plugins out there that will allow you to do that. There's Updraft Plus, which I think is probably the most popular. There's also a service called WordPress that Automatic provides, which will actually make it easy also to restore your site or even check for hacked files, that kind of thing on a regular basis. So some of those are good options. If you use something like Duplicator, you can actually get a backup and then download it easily enough, provided you don't have a huge site. So there's a lot of options, but again, it kind of depends on how big your site is and how much you're willing to spend, and whether if you really want to go cheap and be completely free, are you willing to, actually back it up regularly manually, that kind of thing. So ultimately, there's a lot of options and there's a lot of different ways of doing it. But whatever you do, make sure that you're backing it up to some third-party or third-party service or location. Things like Google Drive or Dropbox or Amazon S3, things like that.
Perfect. It looks like we're about close to time. Just as a reminder for some of you who joined late, we will send an email that will have a recording of this webinar. Again, we noticed a few people were kicked out. We do apologize for that, but we'll definitely make sure that you have access to the webinar, whether you were able to make it live or not. Also, there were a few questions about the staging environment. Our staging environment is not linked to Gutenberg specifically. Through the Bluehost plugin that you'll see on this webinar again, you're able to create a staging environment at any point to test a theme, a plugin, or Gutenberg in this case. So we're definitely glad that you all joined. Thankful for you being here today. Did you guys want to say any wrap-up points?
So as far as questions that are lingering, how are those going to be handled?
We'll try to get compile a list of them and try to get answers to them as quick as possible. I'll likely reach out to you guys again to get some of those answers.
Sounds good.
We may have to do a V2 of this. There were definitely a lot of questions, which is great, but we weren't able to get to all of them. We will send out a survey as well. We'd love to know what you think about the webinar. You're welcome to learn more on the Bluehost blog. If you have any questions for us, feel free to leave a comment there as well. Otherwise, we thank you for joining. Thank you, Micah, for the live demonstration, and definitely appreciate you joining Matt as well for your assistance in answering these questions.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.